You brave souls. My mouth is dry this morning. And I don't know if it's because I've had less to drink this morning than normal or because of the topic. As Melissa said, we gave a little proviso this morning because the text we're dealing with today is probably the most graphic one of the series. But I'm glad you're here, and I know that this afternoon, when you think back on your time here this morning, that you'll be glad that you came. And you'll say, I'm glad I gathered with people who love God and who love me, and I'm glad I got to hear a clear message from God's Word. At the end of the service last week, I indicated that if any of you had questions that you were hoping that would get addressed in this series, that you could just contact me via email or by calling the church office. And one question I got this week was this. Daryl, you said the series is going to last another 6 weeks. Aren't you afraid you'll lose people's attention? Especially those who are single or who have no intention of getting married. And my answer is an unequivocal no. And here's why. We're not just talking about sex for the next 6 weeks. We're going to be touching on and delving into a whole host of topics related to human sexuality and kind of God's will for us in this important area of our lives. And I'll show you what I mean. In last week's introduction to the whole series, I talked about how historically sex has been viewed in three main ways. Sex as gross, sex as God, and sex as gift from God. And we talked about how it's a gift from God for married couples to enjoy. Next week, we're going to be talking about needs your spouse has. And I'm trying to talk Barb into doing the talk with me so she can kind of talk to the ladies and I can talk to the men, which would probably be more appropriate than me telling you women what you think you need, because that's not going to go over well. On May 2, we're going to talk about dating. And if I was single, I would think that's a pertinent topic to my life, dating. On Mother's Day, we're going to talk about what it means for fathers to cherish and to protect their daughters, and also what it means for brothers to cherish and protect their sisters. And I'm really looking forward to our Mother's Day talk. I think that's such an important topic, and I don't think you'll hear that message anywhere else in our culture. On May 16, we'll examine a shift that takes place in all healthy marriages, which is the shift from selfishness to servanthood. And then on the May long weekend, we're going to look at the things that threaten the bonds of love in marriage. So the things that kind of attack or erode the strength of a marriage. And if you're not married, you probably have friends, and you obviously have family. And those things are some of the same things that can attack those relationships as well. So that'll be of appeal to everyone here as well. And then we got something special planned for the last week of the series, which as of yet is a secret. Which leaves one question unanswered. What are we going to talk about today? Well, from last week's introduction, we learned that the Song of Songs, which is the book of the Bible that we're basing this series on, is a love song between a man and a woman. And today we're going to be looking at the section of that love song that deals with the couple's wedding day. All right, and that's covered in the Song of Songs from chapter 3, verse 6 through chapter 5, verse 1. So today, this week, Solomon and his peasant princess get married. They tie the knot. And we're privileged, you and I, to get several snapshots of that wedding day experience for them. And I thought, since we're talking about wedding day snapshots, I would show you a couple from a long time ago. That's Barb and I, in case you can't recognize me. She hasn't changed, but I think I look a little older. That's 19 years ago. We'll be celebrating our 19th anniversary. Yeah, thank you. And I know it sounds cliche, right? But time has flown. It really has. 19 years have just flown by. So let's dive into God's Word. Song of Songs, chapter 3, verse 6. Who is this coming up from the desert like a column of smoke, perfumed with myrrh and incense made from all the spices of the merchant? Look, it's Solomon's carriage, escorted by 60 warriors, the noblest of Israel. All of them wearing the sword, all experienced in battle, each with his sword at his side, prepared for the terrors of the night. So it's the wedding day, and Solomon is in his carriage, and he's riding in his carriage to pick up his bride-to-be. And verse 6 tells us that he smells nice. He's slathered with cologne. Verse 7 tells us that he's escorted by 60 soldiers, the noblest soldiers of the land. And if you weren't here last week, I'll just reiterate, Solomon was the king of Israel. So this is a royal wedding. This is a national event. This is a huge event in the nation of Israel. And if you want a picture of what this must have been like, think back to the wedding between Prince Charles and Lady Diana. Now, I know some of you weren't even born in the early 80s when that wedding took place, but I think you've heard the songs, right? And you've seen the pictures. It was dubbed the wedding of the century. It was just a huge, huge affair. And if you get an image of that wedding, that gives you an image of Solomon, and he's in his carriage to pick up his bride-to-be. Continuing in verse 9. King Solomon made for himself the carriage. He made it of wood from Lebanon. Its posts were made of silver, its base of gold. Its seat was upholstered with purple, its interior lovingly inlaid by the daughters of Jerusalem. Now that's a pretty romantic thing, don't you think? To have a custom-made carriage for your wedding day. Solomon made it. From the description, he was obviously a man of tremendous resources. And if you're a young girl here this morning, you're probably thinking, this sounds like the perfect fairy tale wedding. And it does, except that this isn't a fairy tale. This actually took place in history. So now you've got Solomon and his bride-to-be, and they're riding together in this beautiful, ornate, custom-made carriage. Verse 11. Come out, you daughters of Zion, and look at King Solomon wearing the crown with which his mother crowned him on the day of his wedding, the day his heart rejoiced. Now, on the day that Prince Charles and Lady Diana got married, 600,000 people lined the procession route that their carriage took, and we can only speculate how many people from Israel lined the carriage route that Solomon and his bride-to-be took on their wedding day. But, I mean, again, so far this sounds like every young girl's dream wedding, right? The whole nation is on pause for your wedding to your prince and future king. And it's true, the wedding is the most important day of your life. Second only to the day of your salvation. I mean, think about it. The two most important questions that you and I will ever have to answer are, number one, who is your God? Who is your God? Something is going to be God in your life. It could be sports, it could be Allah, it could be Vishnu, it could be, you're going to have a God. What's your God going to be? Number two, who are you going to marry? Who's going to be your spouse? And your answer to those two questions will kind of determine the trajectory of the rest of your life. It will impact your life in ways that your answer to any other questions probably won't. Now, biblically, a wedding is about two things. Number one, it's about covenant. It's about a man and a woman making covenant vows or promises to each other for a lifetime. Number one, it's about covenant. And number two, biblically, it's about consummation. It's wherein a husband and wife enjoy their first experience of sexual intimacy together. Now, in the Jewish culture, the bride and the groom would consummate their marriage on that first night. And none of the guests would go home. They would all stick around, and then the wedding feast would begin the next day, and it would continue for up to a week. All right? Can you imagine taking a week off for work? That's a pretty expensive wedding gift, isn't it? And we're told in the New Testament that Jesus' first miracle was changing water into wine at such a feast. A bride and groom had run out of wine at their wedding feast. And so Jesus makes not only wine, he makes the best wine that the master of the ceremony had ever tasted.